Welcome traders, it is Sunday the 3rd of July and I'm preparing for this week commencing Monday the 4th of July. Happy birthday America, and just having a look at the major economic news events this week. It is going to be a busy week. I expect quite a bit of volatility, hopefully mostly good volatility, getting some good movements across the market. They're focusing predominantly on Wednesday FOMC, so I do expect the run up to this to be pretty active, and of course Friday we've got non-farm payrolls, and so expecting a lot of movement there. So predominantly I'm going to keep an eye out for those two of the major events. I know historically those are always going to create a lot of movement, and we'll see if there's anything else that's related to any concerns or fears of inflation. So let's go and have a look at the charts and see what they have to say. So starting off with the US dollar index, and you can see it's still testing this 105 area. This last week I was saying I think it's likely to push through. We've got a higher low, a little bit of exhaustion there, but this is still a potential bullish breakout pattern. Not seeing enough of a rejection at this time to be under the impression that there's anything that's going to stop it from breaking through, and therefore I do think that if we do manage to break through, I do expect price to actually accelerate, to potentially start to move and flow freely, because most of the blockage is out of its way. However, just looking at these reactions, until it ultimately does that, I have to be prepared for either eventuality. Let's go ahead and have a look at the euro dollar. So euro dollar, again, starting to produce a little bit of bullish divergence, strong wicks, some strong resistance or support, I beg your pardon, in that area. And again, we have moved down and closed down. So price is sort of slipping to the downside, sort of indicating the potential there for a stronger dollar this coming week. But I do want to see how it reacts. We can see on the daily, we've got a couple of wicks there as well. If we go through to sterling, we've got similar type of reaction as well. And we've definitely got some bullish divergence starting to creep in there. So we are at a major level, as I said in previous, the last couple of weeks, we've at this major sort of crossroads, and what's going to happen is the dollar going to push price over the line. So what I've done is I have drawn a general trend line. I don't often use trend lines. I've put it in here as kind of an indication of whether once price sort of starts to break up above that angle of momentum, then my expectation is not only would it start to break above these highs, but then I would think, okay, that momentum is starting to shift from sort of a more of a bearish mode that we've managed to maintain all the way down to potentially starting to look more and more bullish. So this is what I've done here. Alternatively, if price is going to break out, and I think we'll see this relatively quickly, if that is going to be the case, Monday or Tuesday, almost immediately, potentially that market's going to start to move through those levels. That is a real possibility. However, should the market immediately start to push up through these levels, break these highs and break up here, then what could happen this week is a solid weakening of that US dollar, and there could be some great moves to the upside if we are going to get, for example, a daily or weekly correction to the upside. So look at that would be fantastic. That we get some good trading opportunities. And I think either way, if it does move through that level and starts to accelerate or pick up, or because it's finally broken through that major level of support historical level, and we're breaking outside of a range, we would see some big moves in the same way we've seen with we've seen with dollar yen, but we've seen it with some of the other yen pairs. So I'm very interested to see what happens this week. If we go and have a look at Aussie dollar, US dollar, you can see it started to breach and test, go through that level a bit here. Closed a little bit up at the highs. That doesn't necessarily mean anything, but looking at it here on the 4 hour, it'd be interesting to see if price comes up, finds some resistance, and continues to the downside. So what I'm looking for here is, because we still haven't got that confirmation which way the market's going, is I still have to prepare my trading plan, is effectively exactly what it has been for the last couple of weeks. Looking here, you can see Kiwi dollar also breaking below this low, but then coming back up and closing back up above this level of support in terms of price action. And again, I want to see if we start to break these highs. So I do expect it to happen early on in the week. At least that's my trading plan going forwards, is looking to see if that dollar is going to show its hand. Is it going to manage to push its way through that level? Alternatively, should we start to break on the daily back above these levels, especially if I go back to say euro dollar, if we start to break above 1.06, then to me the likelihood of a bigger correction to the upside comes into play. And again, if that's going to be the case, the market is going to start to become more bullish relatively quickly, because it's been at the lows for quite a while. Let's have a look at dollar yen. So dollar yen here, for example, has got bearish divergence, got a higher high here, but we've got lower highs. We know it's overextended on the monthly. We could see there's some rejections on the weekly candles. So correction for dollar yen to the downside here could go hand in hand with a weakening of the US dollar at this time. Dollar Swissy has already got the double top here. It's broken the low, so it's almost actually, technically it's in a downtrend, but it's very much more range-bound behavior. For me, look at that monthly candle as well. A lot of those strong rejections there, indicating that this is very much wanting to head lower. And so that supports the idea of a weaker US dollar. We can see here dollar CAD also producing quite a few wicks here, showing some exhaustion. It's struggling a little bit here. It is, however, producing high lows, high highs. You can see the MACD is trending higher. That looks nice and bullish. And generally speaking, this doesn't really want to go that much higher. So a lot of these charts are showing, making a case for a weaker dollar, or to see the markets move, to see all of the dollar first currencies head lower, and to see some of the dollar second currencies such as Kiwi dollar, Euro, GBP head higher. Let's have a look at dollar ruble, see how that's doing. That's pushing right down at these limits that we've got. The ruble is the strongest that it's been in a while, and it doesn't really appear to be showing any signs of stopping. Just interesting to see this line in the sand here. I'm curious to see if we'll go anywhere further below that, but you can see we don't have a lot of history on this, but there is a possibility it could strengthen against that. So interesting there as well. Now, coming to the pairs of interest to me, I did want to talk very quickly for historical reasons about Euro Swissy. You know, historically, the Swiss franc has not been this low. This is a monthly chart. And aside from when it was depegged in 2014, if anyone was there, it's a historical moment. It's kind of like, where were you when the Swissy depegged? And, you know, it's similar to where were you when Princess Diana was killed, you know, that kind of thing. It's just very, obviously, not as tragic, but very memorable. So I'm looking here, we've got quite a strong bearish, almost engulfing candle there. We're right at the lows. It's an interesting parity number there. And actually, so this week to me is to see us, aside from this previous period, is to see us starting to venture into that territory, which is something we haven't seen for a while. But there doesn't appear to be any alarm coming from the SMB. So that could provide, there is some bullish divergence here on the weekly. I would mention that if we get a bullish candle this coming week, there could be some really good moves back up to the upside here. So I do think this is more one to watch, not necessarily for good trading opportunities. But then moving on to, say, Euro Aussie, what I like about this, I just want to talk about this. We've had a downtrend on the monthly. We've broken through a very crisp level of support, come back in to it to potentially test it for resistance. So this could, on a monthly basis, could turn out to be a swing high. This is why I'm watching it here. Could turn out to be a swing high. However, also if it breaks above this, we could see this starting to head back up towards, say, 1.59 to 1.6. So it is at a exactly where it is now is a very good turning point. And so what I'll be looking for on the 4 hour is either a break of these lows here, approximately 1.5, and potentially something to break these lows, which would indicate it's going to start to head lower. That would have a nice downtrend. Alternatively, if it starts to break up here, starting to break and starting to approach, let's call it above 1.5 towards 1.56, that could produce some really good trends. And it has been trying for a while to break higher. There's no doubt that it's been trying to move into an uptrend for a while, and it's just doing it in a very haphazard fashion. So I'd like to see that continue. The other one that's of interest to me, you can see here, it's a consolidation. This is Pound Aussie. It's got some higher lows going into this flat level here. It's closing up near the lows. It looks very keen on exploding to the upside, and this could provide a very nice flat level breakout to the upside. Would, I think, a fair target of 1.84 potentially. You've got a lot of nice rejection off the lows here. You've got this flat level here. This is off the highs of these previous monthly candles. You've got a potential uptrend here on that weekly. A lot of really good data here signaling that if it can break through this level, it's got a really strong clear move up towards even potentially as far as 1.85. So I quite like the look of that. Right, moving on to gold. Okay, so gold producing a strong bullish candle here with some potential bullish divergence here. We've just got a higher low off those on the MACD. We are still in an uptrend. This could produce, it's a nice area for it to turn around in. It is a major historical level. Could find some support. So I'd like to see if we do get a bit of a nice bullish candle there. And so this is a good area for gold if it is going to do another move to the upside. We have a move up and a pullback and a move up and a pullback. This could be the next move to the upside. So I'll be watching that. And if it is going to be the case, then I think 1.9 is a very good area for it to target in the near run. Okay, so it'll struggle a bit here at 1.866. We can see there's some level there, but I think that's very much where it's likely to go if it does follow through on that. Let's have a look at silver and see if that's going to be the case. See, on the other hand here, silver is now broken through these levels, not looking that strong. It's potentially coming back down to these old highs. And so this is in a strong downtrend on a monthly downtrend and a weekly and a daily. So it's got a lot that's indicating it could find some struggle. It could struggle here at 20 and up at towards 20.5, 20.4 to see if it finds some resistance. And so I'd like to see if we I think for me, if we break back up above this level, then I think we're likely to carry on. But they don't have to do the same thing at all. Gold, in this case, looks more bullish than silver. We will see, but gold has given an indication that it is going to see if it can move a little bit high. I think copper is going to be similar to silver. I think generally metals have had a really rough week last week. They might be just up for a bit of a correction, a bit of a retracement on the weekly basis. But let's have a look. For now, I would be more inclined to maintain my bearish approach on copper. Certainly, we've got a nice, consistent bearish MACD there, not showing any divergence. Price action is looking heavily bearish, not seeing signs of much bullishness there. Natural gas continues to, this is such a strong, solid, bearish engulfing candle to bring it all the way back down. All of this looks as though it very much wants to head back down towards these old highs here, back towards a significant level there at 4.6. So I want to see if it is going to do that. And so again, I would sort of maintain a bit of bearishness on that. Looking at crude oils, potential here for a higher low. So generally speaking, it looks as though on the weekly, I beg your pardon, that it looks as though it wants to keep creeping up a little bit higher. Let me just go in and put a bit of a level over here. So this is really where I potentially expect another, the upper end of it to be, or for it to find some strong resistance. So this week, looking at that potential bullish candle, should we break the high of that, I think the market is going to attempt to move a little bit higher. It's just producing a series of higher lows as we go. And although we have a lower high here, we're either forming a little bit of a triangular breakout that we're going to do. And so I'm leaning a little bit more towards the upside than I am to the downside. But it's struggling. There's no doubt that these have been, that's West Texas. Let's look at US crude. Let's look at Brent, UK crude. It's definitely struggling in this area. And last week I spoke about the idea I would expect it. It's got some sort of, I used the word that it's got some sort of rash. It's not trending upwards smoothly. There's something going on where it's battling quite a bit. And so my question is, it's overextended on the monthly, and my question to myself at least was, would it be breaking the low here and then having a bit of a correction to the downside? And I still want to keep an eye on, or I still want to keep that as part of my trading plan. We've got a sign here that it could be attempting to produce a higher low. Should it fail, should we end up with a bearish engulfing or immediately break to the downside, then I think the moves become more likely. It's going to head back down, say for example here towards 100. And so for me, that just makes, it's something I would watch. As long as it maintains its bullishness, I'm fine. But I want to know why its behavior has gone from being relatively stable to less stable. And so that's what makes me more edgy. Sugar continuing to push down back towards these old lows here. Okay, so major level here at 1746, and I expect it to continue heading down there. Coffee as well. So coffee really battling out, and it's a mess. I mean, this is just a horror show, just very choppy, not really tradable in any way that I can imagine. I mean, unless you're doing options, there's a possibility here. My expectation for now is this to just bob up and down in that area, so not really do much. Wheat still looks as though, similar to sugar, that looks like that wants to come back down towards, still wants to head down towards 800, and for now, that is still my expectation to see if it can head back down towards those levels. So cotton. All right, so cotton has come back down into these highs. It's also come back to a nice round number and to a previous level. So really, this for me would be, this is a good opportunity for it if it wants to continue up. But it's struggled quite a bit here, and I think a deeper correction makes a lot more sense. So yeah, it is possible very much it could find some resistance, come down and break these lows. So it's the monthly that's going to be of interest to me. It's had a deeper correction here. Yes, it could still find support, but if it starts to breach these lows early on, then I would expect this to have a deeper correction, and it actually could find its way heading back down towards these old highs over here. And however, it can stay above the previous low, which puts it above 91.20. Then it very much has the ability here to produce a nice little bullish candle and set itself up for a nice run back up to the old highs. All right, let's move on to the global indices and have a look at what's going on. So last week I spoke about the idea where the markets were showing clear signs of wanting to turn around, but that doesn't mean they'll succeed. Just that there was definitely an increase in the number of bullish and green candles in this area compared to previous weeks, and also a bit of bullish divergence. Again, for example, even just look at the 4 hour, we ended up with Friday, although we had a move up early in the week, we got knocked all the way down. Very strong reaction. I think this was Wednesday or Thursday. And then the market came down. It actually managed to finish Friday up with a double bottom and pushing higher and breaking into an uptrend on the 4 hour, which in itself is a minor thing, but still worth highlighting. Okay, we basically had a strong finish. If you look on the 4 hour, we broke back up into an uptrend on Friday. So I find that very interesting. The daily's also got some strong bullish signals here. So I want to continue my trading plan from last week over to this week, and I want to continue to see if we can break back above these levels, break these previous highs, and work our way back up to the highs. I am leaning more bullish for the shorter term than bearish at this time. Okay, should the market, again, as I said, overnight, if we suddenly see that dollar just keeps going, it's going to knock the markets, even between now and Tuesday, it's going to knock the markets all the way back down through these lows. However, if we add this to the case that we can see, where there's a case in some of the major currencies, we can see there's a possibility for a weaker dollar. It could all act together. We could see the markets get a bit of a reprieve and push back up. So again, we've got that. We've got signs here where the market is really desperately trying, not necessarily succeeding, but it is making an attempt. So again, just highlighting that on the 4 hour, again, double bottom here. Okay, this one in the case of the S&P failed to break up above the highs, but I want to see if that is going to be the case. So let me just switch off these this pre-open data quickly. And yeah, so I want to see if we can start to break up, especially if we can break these highs. Then the momentum, I think, will pick up. We'll start to see an acceleration. And this time next week, we could have the market finishing back up here. Then it starts to battle with these previous lows, if that's likely to be the case. As I said, if that, for whatever reason over the weekend, I'm not really hearing any signs of the the fears of inflation and any kind of sentiment out there changing. There don't even seem to be any hints of it abating, and therefore, yeah, I think it's fair to expect that we're going to just continue to see this US dollar steamroll everything. And absolutely, but I need to be able to see that happen with my own eyes. It's at a major line in the sand. And again, we could just see that break this week and then see the markets take another big drop and see the currencies continue to push in that direction they're going. All of that is a possibility. Again, I'm not seeing that yet, and I want to be prepared for the possibility that level could reject it, and therefore we could see the markets, claim back a bit of ground. So I'm prepared for both. And it'll be interesting to see where we are ultimately. The Nasdaq here, having had quite a big knock, it also finished here with a relatively bullish finish in the 4 hours here. But it doesn't mean anything yet unless we can continue and break above these highs on the 4 hour. And so that's stuff that can happen on Monday or Tuesday. So that's why I'm talking about the 4 hour. That would result in a higher low and potentially an uptrend on the daily. And that would also mean that next week's candle would finish in bullish territory, and we'd see a sign of that. So we've definitely got, without a doubt, bullish divergence on the daily, which usually means when you get bullish divergence on a daily chart, it means the weekly is getting ready for a retracement. That's a generalization, but it is generally the case. So look at this. Price push below here. So this is the Russell 2000, push back up, and then sort of a bearish setup and managed to push back up. We've got higher lows here. It's not a guarantee of anything. It could just be a bull flag before it continues down. But you could just see the price action is trying. And even here, trying to push into double bottom up here, which will produce bullish divergence over there, beg your pardon, and start to break a little bit higher. Let's look at the Ftse. So the Ftse's gone into a bit of an uptrend on the daily, and still in a good area on the monthly for it to find some support at previous areas of resistance. That weekly is not really a strong finish. You could see that it attempted to go up and finish near the lows, but didn't close as far. When candles close, price action closes right near the lows, then that's usually an indication that that market is likely to hit low. But it didn't actually do that, which means that the week didn't finish as negative as it could have. So again, I'll be looking just to see if we break these highs and continue on. I mean, this in itself is usually, if we break the low, that's a continuation. So that is a feasible option. And actually looking at the DAX now, where we've had sort of bullishness when the US indices have been quite weak. We don't really have that at the moment. We had quite a bearish close. We're seeing a bit of a push back up. We're below 13,380, 13,400. And so this actually looks a little bit more bearish than anything else. I find that noteworthy. Both the Ftse and the DAX not looking as bullish as I would have expected. The Nikkei as well starting to close a little bit down near those lows. And actually this is very bearish. We've got wick rejections all along the way here. And now we've got to close where we are. So far now on this point, that is usually an indication we would see this to continue to hit low. So interesting. To me, I think that means I'll have to keep an open mind with regards to there possibly being a bearish follow through on these, which actually means if that's going to be the case, that could very well be the case in the US. Just going back, having a quick look at that, I still see bullishness here. I still want to see how it reacts at that. So interesting. All right, let's move on and have a look. What is the ASICs looking like? You see this has come right down this last week, closed right down near, I beg your pardon, just in recent weeks, broken through that, an attempt to push back up higher and failing to do that. So just that there's clearly heavy selling pressure on that daily as well, looking to come back down towards these lows. So I find that very interesting, not as bullish as I was expecting. This is the first time I've actually looked at them since last week, so this is why I'm having that kind of reaction. Okay, let's move on to the equities of interest here. Glencore, for example, very strong bearish divergence there in a double top, finding some strong resistance there at 530, 533. It's back down in the moving averages. And here it's attempting to find a bit of a base. So also looking at some wicks here. But again, overall, we've now got those sort of confirmed trends, bearish trends on multiple time frames. And everything looks relatively bearish here. So there's a bit of bullish divergence here for sure on the 4 hour. Could be a bit of a push up. We'll see if I can follow through on that. Whereas, say, for example, Tesco here, you can see is trying to find a strong level of support. Let me just go in and mark that level over there. And you can see here, it's definitely trying to push its way through that. Which could result, I mean, as I would have liked for it to come back here to test the level of resistance and support, but it is definitely trying to stay where it is. It's got an uptrend on the daily, so for me, that's interesting. Will we go from here, start to break above these highs, or start to break below the lows? That is got some signs there of potential possibility for Tesco. Amex as well, back down at these old highs. I mean, again, that weekly does not look as strong as I would have expected. There's a little bit of bullish divergence creeping in here, so we'd have to break above these highs. Overall, this weekly is not looking great. It does look as though it could continue to drop a bit lower. Actually looking heavily bearish in terms of momentum there. But the 4 hour and daily look as they want to push higher. So getting some mixed signals here, which means I would really want to see the market show me first that it can break above these highs before I start to lean more on that optimism. However, you know, for example, then you move into Apple. Apple's got clear bullish divergence. You can see this looks very keen to turn around and break. It's got a higher low, potentially wants to break and create a higher high. It's in a really good area for it to do it. So as in previous level of resistance, now becoming support. So that for me is going to be worthwhile watching. So there's a couple that look more bullish than bearish there. We've got ARC Innovation. That's got a nice little potential there for a double bottom on the weekly with some bullish divergence, definitely holding out there. I need to see them break above that sort of 46 or 47, let's call it that 47 level, and produce it. Okay, so it's range bound at the moment. If it could break above the 47, even higher, obviously close up towards that 50, then the likelihood of it starting to recover or starting to push up again from here becomes a real possibility. AT&T back up at its highs again. So that's a strong recovery from this move down and back up at the highs. Look at that. That's looking pretty strong. So for me, I think it's feasible to see some of these actually moving higher this coming week. Some of them giving more bearish signals. I'm not seeing green shoots everywhere. I'm seeing it on some of them as well. So Berkshire Hathaway as well, looking as though it has that possibility here that it could be able to push up a little bit higher this coming week. Higher low on the daily. Can we follow through and get a higher high as well? No real sort of, there's no other clues here other than that. I'd like to see if we can break that high and do it. So this is when I have to obviously act with more caution because there isn't an abundance of evidence across all of them. There's individual ones that look as though they've got some support. BP here as well. That's a nice strong finish on the daily at a major level at the bottom of a weekly range. And so it could find its way back up. But then you've got that sort of, we've got a lower high on the indicator, and a bearish, almost bearish engulfing candle. So there's a lot here that indicates this could potentially be heading lower. And not only that, but obviously it's one of our commodities and it could be doing that as well. For example, moving on to Exxon. Exxon's in a really good area for it to continue to the upside. Bit of a bullish candle here, finished, but if it falls through the support, and it does honestly look more bearish to me than anything else, I would expect it to do a deeper correction. Coca-Cola looking good. So this is a really nice strong finish on the weekly. There's nothing here to me that doesn't say this won't continue up, but it has to get through this area, which is a strong area of resistance for it. Let's call it 65. And so I do expect it to continue to push back up to those levels. Didn't have a very big correction. And you know what, if it turns out, and again, I'm not going to assume which one it's going to be at this time. I think it's very difficult to predict where we're going to be, in 3 or 6 months now, or whether we're going to see a bit of a recovery now, or whether we're going to see the full, worst case scenario unfold. I think it's too soon to say which one's going to happen because I know that the big institutions are going to attempt their best to avoid the worst case scenario unfolding. And of course, that could lead to it happening anyway, but it might actually be able to curb it. So let's just wait and see. FedEx. Here is new on my list. I've included that today. So here I'm looking to see what happens. Just looking at it going back here to February. In fact, even if I go a little bit further back to September, it's been largely range bound between 250 and 200. And we've got a bit of a ping pong between the highs and lows and indecision candle from last month. So looking at June, so it really has reached a point where it doesn't know which way it wants to go. We have a bit of a bearish close here, so I think it might want to come down and test these lows. But it's range bound. So the question is, where is it going to go next? We'll have to see how which way it heads out from that range. We've got General Motors attempting to slow down here and trying to kick off a turn, but that weekly finish was relatively bearish. This isn't necessarily done with its moves to the downside, so that's interesting to me. Some of them have got, I can see they've got a bit of a base from which they could push higher, but not all of them. Okay, here we've got a bit of bullish divergence on the indicator looking at JP Chase. It's fallen through this major level, big bearish engulfing candle. Usually to me would mean that it wants to hit lower and tap 106. But at the same time, we've got its first attempt here to produce a bit of a bullish move. So some of the charts have that. For example, as I said, Berkshire Hathaway have got a case to be moving higher. Having a look here, for example, Meta starting to slow down, big drop, pulling back, starting to put on the brakes, bullish divergence creeping in, but not also at the same time not showing a lot of strength. We've got a slightly higher low here. I stand by it. I think there's some of these are going to attempt to push high, but they might ultimately finish lower because there just doesn't seem to be enough strength just yet. I'd need to see across some of these that aren't showing any signs of it. I'd need to see a strong push higher, and that just doesn't appear to be the case. Here, for example, looking at Morgan Stanley, we've come back into the previous lows, produced a bearish candle. We've got the 50, 20, and 10 in a bearish formation here. This is a really good place for it to continue down from here and actually accelerate potentially down towards, say, 60. So obviously I don't want that to necessarily be the case, but it is the right area for it to do it. So this week I'll be looking to see if we break these lows first before breaking highs. But if we do get some out of nowhere, we get a bit of nice little bullish good news, we might see the markets break that trend. Okay, Netflix. Okay, so Netflix here, for example, is trying to find a base. It's got some bullish divergence. The indicator is starting to head higher. The weekly has moved down and starting to head sideways, but not. And the 4 hour now looks nice and bullish. That wants to break up and head a little bit higher. We can see the weekly dropping down. But this indicates, this collectively, this feels more as though it wants to keep going sideways. Might go up and down, but generally go sideways, rather than the fact that it really is starting to turn on. This could simply be an accumulation phase before we see a recovery. So this is an interesting idea. What is a real possibility this coming week is we see some of the ones that have those bullish signs have a move higher, and some of the other ones that don't look that bullish manage to kind of just stay where they are. They manage to stay where they are. And then next week we see them follow through. You know, there's a bit of a lag. That's a very real possibility. Nvidia as well, starting to slow down as it approaches 138, 140. Strong bearish move down here. And now I need to see what's going to happen. So no real divergence at this point in time. It still looks relatively bearish. Again, this would be a good example of one of those ones that doesn't really seem to, it's coming down, it's approaching a major level, it's in an area where it can turn, but it isn't showing any signs of doing that at this point in time. PayPal is trying here. You can see here it's really trying to reverse. It's moved down, pull back, move down, push back up almost immediately. So the 70 level here is relatively significant. But man, I mean, it hasn't necessarily got that much further to go. There isn't, you know, it's used up most of its value if you look at the kind of price here. I just want to put in that level. It's an area where it can potentially hold. We'll have to see again. What I need to see this week is a close really strong near the highs, give us a nice bullish green candle on the weekly. That would then be a potential indication for it to start to climb, or that at least it is going through that accumulation phase right now. So Spider as well, that's a nice, this is a great example. So here we go. We've got a double bottom or a slightly higher low, bullish divergence on that, and you can see that bullish reaction, a rejection there, a series of rejections, nice bullish green candle, and followed by a full volume green candle. So that in isolation is a really good sign. Then you see it on the monthly, you can see you've got a double bottom here, or at least you've got these twin wicks. That's great. And if we break above those highs, we get a strong rejection, not just a single candle, but a double kind of rejection of those lows, and we start to see price. Then the idea that it could head back up towards 92 or 93 is not unreasonable. You can see that 4 hour came back, in fact, beautifully on a micro scale. Look at this, came back and did a double bottom on that. So in other words, 2 rejections off this level on the 4 hours, meaning that on a sort of a smaller scale, we've got a rejection of this low and it wants to continue. So the question is, are there buyers above this level here, buyers above, let's call it 77.50, if we can get it to keep going. And on the daily, we've got this pullback and we found support and we're heading off. So it's the same sort of price action, but a nice solid rejection of those lows. This is attempting to climb, and we do have that bullish divergence. So we've got to break above the high. So this is what I want to see on the other ones, for example, PayPal or Nvidia. That's what I want to see. Spotify as well, going largely sideways. This again is going to be similar. So I can almost break all of these into three categories. Either showing clear bullish signs, some really good potential there for continued moves to the upside. Some showing mostly sideways, and I don't know if they're not looking super bearish, but they're not looking bullish at all. And some that are looking as though they are settling in or just they're comfortable in their bearish trend. And that is something I haven't necessarily seen for a while. That could be a good thing. That could mean that we're at a stage where either the market, the worst case is it's pausing before another move down, which could again tie up with that dollar we were talking about, or we could be at a stage where it's potentially accumulating before doing a bit of a recovery, and that's what we're going to see, and there'll be a lag. So the weakest ones won't be showing any of those green signs now. They'll be showing that after the more bullish ones, or the ones that are slightly leading the pack will do that. So let's have a look at Tesla. So Tesla, yeah, it's still an area where I highlighted in blue where it can turn if this is essentially looking at it on a higher time frame. We've got that possibility there. We've got some nice strong rejections here on the weekly, but we need a weekly candle, a bullish one, to break above these highs and close higher. You can see even a consolidation straight on this. The only concern I have is, as what is Tesla without Elon Musk? I just don't know the answer to that fundamentally. If he wasn't there, would the brand do better? Would it not do better? What would actually be the case? If they are intertwined, then that's not necessarily a good thing because the product itself should be able to survive. And I say that because what if Tesla's around in 50 years' time? I'm just curious as to what that will do. It's like Apple without Steve Jobs. There's always that vulnerability if that part of the success of the company is tied to the person who leads it. I'm always curious about that. So here, finishing off with Vanguard as well, we've got that high low. That looks really nice and bullish. That wants to push higher. But you can see in cases like this, you get that gap up and then it comes back down. And so that could well be the case this coming week. So again, I think Monday and Tuesday are going to be relatively eye-opening. And again, we've got FOMC on Wednesday and we've got non-farm on Friday. We've got plenty this week that could move the dollar in either direction. So just keeping an open mind and trading around that, managing risk around that. Okay, so looking at 10-year T-note. Strong rejection off those lows. So that's a really great rejection. It's a bigger one than we've had in the past. And then sort of continue to push a little bit higher. We have got I think there's some fair to say there's some bullish divergence in this weekly chart, and we've also got some bullish price action finishing up there. If this week we can follow through and break and close higher, then I think it's fair to say we're going to see a nice swing low. Then we could see a move going up to those other older lows, EURUSD, as well as strong rejection off those lows. So there's something happening. There's something happening in the markets here where we're getting pushback that we haven't had for a while. So that's interesting to me. All right, let's wrap it up looking at cryptos, guys and girls. Okay, so we're in the right place for a nice little double bottom or rejection. We've had some bullish divergence. We've continued to kind of fall down. If equities get that boost, then I think it's fair to say some of that boost could potentially roll off onto cryptos. They are at a nice major levels here, but if I wasn't aware of any of that, I would say, look, it's trying to put the brakes on, but it also looks relatively weak here. We've still got a continuation. We can get what's called a pause and go. So we get a move and then we get a little inside candle and then it just carries on down. But yeah, we can see even here on the last few kind of days of the week, it's trying to slow down. Let's see how Ethereum's doing. Also sitting in on this potential level here. It's definitely sort of pushing a little bit higher. It's not super bearish at this point in time. It's not really going anywhere. So it's just going almost flatlining. Okay, it looks very similar to Bitcoin. Cardano, this is more of a bearish breakout pattern. Okay, so this looks bearish. We've seen this actually in the past. To me, this looks very similar to a bearish breakout pattern. So let me just kind of put my levels in here. Let's put it here. So to me, the level in the sand is going to be around about here. And I expect, it looks to me as though this could possibly, I need to see these highs broken from where we are here. Because if we don't really get that continuation, this is going to break. And then it means that its next level is going to be a little bit further down. Okay, it means it'll certainly hit back down towards these old lows. So let me just go ahead and mark that as well. So that's what we were looking for. But again, there's that possibility of there is a little bit of bullish divergence on that low one. We were looking at Cardano. Let's go to Binance. Binance as well, trying to produce a higher low. Interesting there. Look at that. Double inside candles and some wicks. It's desperately trying to stay above these levels. Look at that on a monthly basis. Really trying to do that. But it's not giving much clues. If it breaks here, it becomes bullish. If it breaks below these lows, it continues down. And I don't mean to be that vague on it myself. It's not offering a huge amount of clarity. Break above this high on the daily. would support the idea it's going to head higher. We've got a little bit of, we've got a bearish candle here near the moving averages, which usually means it's reaching that point of equilibrium where it could continue down. We've got smaller candles. They can proceed a big move. Okay, so looking at all of this, there's a bit of a level here. I want to see if we can stay above that, so I'll just put that in as well. To kind of sum up here, I'm seeing, as I said, the worst case scenario is that we're not even at, we haven't seen the worst of things to come. We could see a much accelerated move across equities, which would also knock cryptos even further south. We would then see the dollar probably push through its 105 level and start to pick up from there. And we'd see Euro, GBP, Aussie, we'd see dollar, yen, a whole lot of pairs start to really break and continue into, especially the GBP and Euro pairs, into areas they haven't been in a while. We would see EURUSD start to push into an area where it's never been. And again, as I've said in the last few weeks, this is an area, we could be entering a new phase of the markets. What I'm looking for this week is to see if we are going to get a reprieve from any of that, if we're going to see a little bit of if we've gone to the cliff edge and then we're going to come back from it or not. And so this week, I think, again, my trading plan is largely the same as from last week and the week before, because we haven't actually rejected that level. We haven't got a clear rejection at this time. What I have seen in equities, they've slowed down. Some of them are trying to turn around. But this week will be, and again, I was hoping it would be clarified last week, but I think it's going to be this week. Is this week going to be the week where equities manage to push back and start to get a bit of a recovery? Or are they trading sideways before stepping over that kind of cliff edge or just heading a little bit lower? But it isn't going to help the sentiment, is it? So that's why, again, for me, it's trading cautiously. I think the ones I find probably the most attractive at this point in time for trading purposes are going to be currencies. Gold isn't really revealing much out of what it's doing. It might have some a bit of a bounce in it. And oils are a little bit tricky on there. But with regards to equities for trading purposes, it's going to get quite tricky. From investment purposes, thinking longer term, the sale could continue. So that's it from me, ladies and gents. Thank you very much for your time. Apologize, I'm a bit low energy tonight for whatever reason. It's been a crazy weekend work-wise. And I look forward to chatting to you next week. Thank you very much. Have a great week.